Jon Stewart was on CNN where he talked about how Donald Trump isn't the only narcissist in Washington. Watch.
So do you think, because obviously we're all caught up in this sort of daily Trump fest. I mean, every single newspaper, every radio station, every bit of social media.
You got to make money too.
Well, it's dissecting.
You got bills to pay, man. You got electric bills. You got food. You know, this guy he's giving you all cash. The cash flow in the Trump era for these TV stations and for these...
Can I say, that might have been an issue, and maybe it still is an issue for the people who are the bean counters, but we, the journalists, I think, believe that our job is to navigate the truth and to do the fact-checking and all the rest of it. So I think that's what motivates a lot of people.
But I think the journalists have taken it personally.
Okay,
they're personally wounded and offended by this man. He baits them, and they dive in, and what he's done well, I thought, is appeal to their own narcissism, to their own ego. Because what he says is, and the journalists stand up and say, we are noble, we are honorable, how dare you, sir? And they take it personally. And now he's changed the conversation to not that his policies are silly or not working or any of those other things. It's all about the fight. He's able to tune out everything else and get people just focused on the fight. He's going to win that fight.
You know, even Bob Woodward said that in his book on the Trump White House that a lot of journalists are too emotional about this. But it's hard for us to be dispassionate when words from the White House are aggressive against us and you know, raise the specter of violence against us.
Think of the communities.
No, we're used to it, believe me.
But think of the communities
We've been
of
out there
color.
in the field.
Think of Muslims. Think of the black community. People. You know, when journalists rise to this outrage of how dare you say this about us, think of the lives that they've been leading under this and what they've been put under.
This clip is perfect because I haven't seen anyone, especially somebody in a position of power like Jon Stewart, confront journalists about their own ego. Now, it's wrong for Donald Trump to say that the media is the enemy of the people. The only reason Donald Trump is doing that about CNN, about Washington Post, about New York Times, is because they are correctly critiquing him. They are correctly calling out Trump's bullshit. But there are actual legitimate critiques people can make about the establishment press. And one of them is that they get more outraged about Donald Trump calling the media the enemy of the people than they do about any other issue. Journalists should be more outraged about how people of color are being treated by this Trump administration. Journalists should be more outraged about how people are not getting paid a living wage for 40 hours a week of work. Journalists should be more outraged that 45,000 people a year die in the US due to a lack of access to health care, or that medical bankruptcies are the most common form of bankruptcy, or that Americans pay on average double than what other countries pay in health care. There are a number of issues that journalists should be more outraged about than Trump's offhand remarks about the media. But because of their own ego, because of the media's own ego, their own narcissism, they are personally offended when Donald Trump calls them the enemy of the people. So they show more outrage about that, more anger about that. There are so many, anytime Trump does that, watch Morning News the next day. Watch Morning Joe or CNN. They have that covered. They got that, but they're not talking about how people are making, $7.25 an hour? They're not talking about how people are dying due to a lack of access to healthcare, and that if you lived in Canada, you would have that healthcare and not have to worry about paying for it. They don't talk about that. And anytime you bring up those issues, like you bring up healthcare or you bring up wages, the question is, but how can we afford that? Oh, these corporations can't afford to hire wages. We can't afford to pay for everyone's health care. But when you have tax cuts for the rich, I guess we can afford that. They'll point out that the tax cuts are for the rich, but they won't point out how much that costs, at least not to the degree that they talk about it when it's health care or anything that would benefit the vast majority of people over the elites. That isn't their focus. Their focus is always, when it comes to them taking something personally, that is above and beyond any other issue because they are personally offended. So why We need more comedians like Jon Stewart. Because we need them to become journalists, because they would have an actual proper critique of politicians. The focus would be on big money, on the elites, how they control everything, how they use divisive issues like issues of race or culture to divide people and distract people from actual issues like wages and healthcare. So look, Jon Stewart is one of the main reasons I got into doing this. I didn't know anything about politics when I was in my early 20s. I started watching The Daily Show and I got into it. I began to actually understand what was going on. And then I began to read more about politics and how the powerful control everything and how we enable it and how we have a media that enables it because of the issues they focus on, the issues they choose to focus on above other issues. So just, I don't know. I have nothing but pure love for Jon Stewart, and what he said here is so important, and I hope more people see it.